And I've been involved in Odyssey of the Mind for 8 years now, in one way or another, mostly as a coach. I've been coaching, and this year actually, Kyla is not doing it. Kyla's in 8th grade, and she's not doing it, so I'm not coaching, but I'm still involved in through the volunteering, through spontaneous fair and all that other stuff. And so Odyssey of the Mind is a great thing. I'm sure you've been hearing about it all morning. If you're new, we love Odyssey of the Mind. So I'm obviously giving my volunteer time to it because it's really a fun thing. It's really great to get the kids to work together as a team and to think creatively. Here we're talking about the teamwork part of that, but really the creative thinking is also a lot of fun and important. And working with kids who aren't used to that is really where the teamwork comes in, is to helping the shy, quiet ones to be listened to have a voice, and to use that is really, again, where you as the coach comes in helping them to listen and respect and all of these other things that Kyla will walk us through. So Kyla wants me not to forget the sort of team building written in cursive. The kids can write team building in cursive, but your job as the coach is the one who crosses the T's and dots the I's and sort of helps bring it together, helps to make sure it's all coherent and all of that. Now, your job as a coach for team building is indirectly important for the long term. If you build that teamwork and you make them help them feel like a team now in October and November, before they get into their long-term problem, they'll do better in their long-term problem. So indirectly, you're influencing their long-term problem. Directly, spontaneous problems, there's a lot of points for teamwork often. So they have to build a structure as tall as they want. So they might build the tallest structure. 2 kids out of the 5 they're building might build a really tall structure. But the other 3 kids were sitting there telling stories to each other or not paying attention. So they'll get the 20 points for the structure and 0 points for teamwork. So teamwork is really important, and as a coach, you can encourage them to work as a team, to listen to each other, to respect each other, and especially on spontaneous, you can coach them for teamwork. So it's fun, it's important. I really like working with them on the spontaneous problems and helping them learn new skills from the youngest ones all the way up, but really working together. So doing these teamwork type activities now, especially if you have new teams or kids that haven't worked together, Kyla can give you the example from last year with some new kids on her team and the importance of doing some of these teamwork activities. You want to talk about your kids from last year?
So last year we had 4 kids that had done it. We had done it together for like 3 years in a row, and then we couldn't find any other people. So we had 2 people that were a year older than us, and we didn't know anything about them. The only thing we knew was their name, but we couldn't place it with a face. So we had to do all of these activities to like get to know these people, so they just weren't strangers with a floating face.
So if the 4 of them didn't know which one was Nicole and which one was Eiley, surely Nicole and Eiley didn't know the names of the other 4 because they all hadn't met each other before. So that was important, and by the end they really did get comfortable and trust each other. The other thing that's important to figure out early as a coach is what kind of team that you have. So do you have a team with all 4th graders and they're all quiet and shy? Do you have a team with 3 leaders? Do you have a team with no leaders? Do you have a team with all boys, all girls, half and half? How do they get along and how do they work together? Do you have a team with existing relationship, two girls, let's say, that have always been together, have to be together, and they don't want to listen to anybody else? Your job is to split those things up and give everybody a voice and help everybody work together. Again, for teamwork points, but also because the experience will be better for everyone if they work as a team. And so for the younger kids, sometimes it's just, the first time I coached Kyla's team, she had 4 girls and 2 boys. And I remember, I wish I had videotaped it, would have been nice. But the first time I gave them a hands-on problem, it was some paper towel rolls and some tissue boxes and a little bit of tape. And the 4 girls went off, took all the supplies, started building, and Roger kept saying, if we twirled up the paper and made straws, it would be much stronger. He kept saying it. So at the end, the whole thing falls down. And I said, hey, you guys, did you hear what Roger was saying? And they said, Roger was saying something? I didn't hear Roger. And it's like, Roger, what were you saying? And Roger said, well, I said, if you roll this up. And I said, hey guys, let's try it. Let's start over. Let's do it again with Roger's way. And guess what? It stood up, it was tall, it was strong. But again, part of it is just having them respect each other and care about the other opinions. And so that was when I was like, oh, we gotta take a step back. We have to figure out how to get these guys to work together. And so some of the groups that we talked to this morning were saying, especially for some of the middle school kids, was that they've started to do some spontaneous problems and the kids are starting to compete against each other. And that's not teamwork. That's not gonna work. So if you're starting to see some of that, what you could do, one thing to do is just to say, okay, here's your supplies, you guys are competing against me, the coach, or me and another parent, so give them something else to compete against, so they're not competing against each other. Because if they divide the supplies into two groups, they're already gonna have half the size or half the effect, potentially. So again, you're encouraging them to find ways to work together as a team, to listen to each other. So again, considering all those issues along the way is important. Let's see, you wanna talk about your?
Okay, we made a fun little acronym for what team building is all about. So take your turn at team building. So the T is talking to each other, the team has to communicate, understanding each other. The team has to understand the teammate, well, each other. Respecting each other, everyone has to respect one another so that you can work as a team. Names, you must know everyone's names. So back to the whole Nicole, Eiley thing. We had to know their names before we could take the next step. Attentive, you have to be attentive and listen to everyone so you can get something done. Trust, you must trust each other. You must know that if you fall, that your teammate will pick you up. Team building.
Okay, so, so let's think. So some of the other things that have worked with some of the groups, one of the things that we've done is try early on, especially with the elementary age kids, is doing, one of the problems that I liked that I did early on was one, if you just Google OM spontaneous animal habitat, is a problem that would come up where it gives you like 2 paper towel tubes, some construction paper or cardboard, and it basically says to create an animal, give it a name, a habitat, and traits. And by doing that, a number of years, the kids have sort of made something that they've used in subsequent problems. So if you, especially, I think this would be fun. I've never done it with primary kids, but if one week you had them create the animal, and then the next week you said, assuming the animal came out to be something interesting and useful, the next week you could say, put your animal in a commercial, sing a jingle. Then you get them to kind of get interested in it. Maybe they could make a flag or something for the animal, do things for that if the animal worked out. So Kyla's team, the first year they did Bob Mouse, was what they had created with the pieces of paper and the whatever. They made Bob Mouse, which is on my t-shirt. They used it as like their mascot all along, which was a good way of sort of getting them attached to something together. Sometimes when they had to tell a story problem, they put Bob Mouse in the story. To the judges, it would be creative. To me, it was like, oh, Bob Mouse again? But again, to an outside judge, they knew what Bob Mouse was going to do. They knew they could make sure they had a story that had a beginning, a middle, and an end because Bob Mouse had some features that they knew about. So that's kind of a fun problem to do early on. Another one that was kind of fun that seemed to click for my older daughter's team was they had one problem where, and again, if you look up OM, create a state, I think you'll find it spontaneous, was one where they were to create a new state, name it, design a symbol, a flag, a state tree, and a state song that you have to sing to the judges. So they created the state of art. That was their state. And so they had a little jingle. What was their jingle?
State of art is where everything starts.
Anyway, so every time before they would go down to do, they might have snack, and then we had a room where they did OM, and they'd always go singing that on the way down to the room. I mean, it just gave them something to connect around. It was a fun problem. They creatively answered it. Again, finding ways to get them jingles, things that they get attached to as a team is a nice way for them to sort of build that some teamwork and that karma. What were some of the other?
Karma?
The interactions. Questions.
I don't think that
Question
means what you
authority.
think it means.
Thanks.
I was just quoting The Princess Bride.
Oh, you were. Okay. So the other thing with some of these interesting dynamics in some of the groups, is often you as the coach have to sort of play that bad cop. So there was a number of times we had a middle school all-girl group, and there was one thing that we would do, especially if you have a group where you don't have, where you have some kids who don't speak up a lot. One thing to do is to make a different leader every time. So different weeks, maybe they're talking about the narrator, maybe they're going to talk about the backdrop this week, maybe they're going to talk, and I don't know if you went to brainstorming, but brainstorming is a good way to sort of come up with a whole bunch of ideas on whatever they're talking about. So let's say they're talking about the narrator this week. So you have different team leaders each week. And so Kyla, for example, in her group had a girl who was very quiet, but when it was her turn to be team leader, I would be sitting there, and if people talked over her, I'd say, it's Caitlin's turn to be the leader. Step back. We'd have a talking stick sometimes to help empower, the people to listen to each other. Again, a big part of teamwork is that sort of listening or being attentive to each other. So having different group leaders often stops that one older kid or the louder kid or the more domineering kid or the Kylas of the world from talking all the time. So having a different strategies like that is useful. And some of these team building activities that we do, they're also ways to sort of empower the different kids. Some of the groups earlier today were talking about how, one man was talking about how he had a third, fourth, and fifth group that had 2 popular kids in the school. And most of the kids, if the popular kids had an idea, they didn't want to contradict the popular kids' ideas. So some of the ways to get around some of those issues, again, we want everybody's ideas to be valued. Going back to our ideas we learned from brainstorming, for example, if you're brainstorming today about how, like, maybe there's a communication system in the long-term problem. So maybe the kids are brainstorming on the communication system. You as the coach can say, how about if everybody writes their ideas on sticky notes? Let's write as many ideas as you can come up with and put them on the wall for sticky notes. So you're the observer. You're not giving them ideas. You're not doing anything. You're just facilitating and saying, let's write all the ideas down. That's a good idea. Write it down. That's a good idea. Write it down. Everything's a good idea. But what you want is a lot of ideas. And what this avoids is that the popular kids' ideas are the only ones that are heard. And it avoids, there was another person that was talking about there's 2 girls that were always fighting over. Girls each put 10 ideas on the wall, plus the other 15 ideas from the group. Nobody's as wedded to the ideas. Once those ideas are up there, you as the coach can say, hey, let's go do snack. Or let's go do a spontaneous problem. Break them away from everybody's taking ownership to the one idea or specific things on the wall. Break them away from that, have them do something else, and then they can figure out the rest of the communication system in a week or 2, or next week, or something. So that helps to sort of not make people feel like they're wedded to ideas. As they think about them, they might forget which ones were theirs. They might have had 5, and they're not as tightly linked to one versus the other anymore as they were when they were sitting there. Again, you as the coach can sort of support these strategies, but you can't put ideas on the wall. And you can't say that one's better than this one. But you can facilitate how they interact with each other around coming up with ideas. Because sometimes what will happen is one idea will get talked about, it was the popular kid, and next thing you know, that's the idea. So if you started as, let's brainstorm first. We're here to brainstorm today. And everybody has ideas. And sometimes the other thing is just give everybody a pad. Just write as many ideas, don't put them up on the wall yet. And then they put their 10 ideas on the 4 ideas, 1 idea on the wall afterwards. So nobody's sort of seeing everybody's ideas. Everybody uses the same color. So there's less ownership. So just thinking like ideas like that helps everybody to have the voice, especially when you have some of these strong personalities. Or the quiet ones who have really good ideas but won't give them. So another thing that works well in terms of that, in terms of respecting everybody's ideas, is one of a common spontaneous problem is giving everybody a piece of aluminum foil and saying, make something. So everybody has 2 minutes to make something. You put it in the middle of the table. It's a verbal hands-on. So the hands-on was the making things, and then they all have to go around the table for 4 minutes maybe and say something about 2. So they pick up 2 and say something about it. Then they put it down. The next person picks up 2. And the nice thing about that problem is everybody makes something, and then everybody can't just talk about their own. They have to talk about any 2, and maybe they won't talk about their own. But the issue is that everybody's ideas have been shared now, and you can put those in the middle of the table and see how people use them. So that's another one that, again, gives voices to everybody. So that's nice. So let's do some of these. Teampedia.net is a great place to find a lot of these team building type activities. You may have done these team building activities at workshops and for work or any of those things. Some of them work better with the youngest kids, and some of them work better with some of the older kids. But the first one that we'd like to do, which we think is helpful for getting people comfortable and all of that, is can we get